The starship Aurora Spear drifted slowly into the orbit of Orion Prime. From the wide viewing window, Cadet Lyra Cade pressed her forehead against the glass and stared at the silver-blue planet below. Orion Prime glittered with oceans, forests, and cities that shone like scattered gems under the rising sun. It looked peaceful, elegant, and very different from the wild, untamed world she had come from. Earth. For most people across the galaxy, Earth was not a place of beauty. It was called a death world, a dangerous planet filled with predators, diseases, and natural disasters. Aliens who studied Earth from afar listed it as unsuitable for safe colonization. Yet somehow, humans had survived and even thrived there for thousands of years. Lyra had grown up running through thick forests, where wolves hunted in packs and storms could tear trees out by the roots. She had learned to swim in oceans where sharks swam close, and she had hiked mountains where one wrong step meant a fall into icy darkness. To her, Earth was home. To the rest of the galaxy, it was madness. Now she was here, on her way to Orion Academy, the most respected military training school in the Union of Worlds. It was a place where the best cadets of every known species were sent to learn leadership, strategy, and combat. Only one human had ever been accepted before, and he had left after 1 year. Lyra would be the second. She straightened her uniform jacket, feeling the stiff fabric press against her shoulders. It was pale gray with blue stripes at the sleeves, the mark of a first-year cadet. Her heart beat hard in her chest as the ship docked with the Academy's orbital station. Arrival at the Academy. When the doors opened, Lyra stepped into the wide docking bay. The air smelled faintly metallic, mixed with sterilized cleanliness. Around her, dozens of other young cadets stepped out of shuttles, tall reptilian beings with scaled skin, bird-like avians with sharp beaks, furry, four-armed creatures who moved gracefully despite their size. They all turned to look at her. Whispers spread quickly, and Lyra heard the word more than once. Deathworlder. She kept her chin high and walked forward with measured steps. She knew their stares were not just curiosity. They were fear, mixed with doubt. To them, humans were strange, dangerous, and unpredictable. At the check-in desk, an officer scanned her ID chip. The alien officer had skin like smooth green stone and eyes like polished glass. He looked at her, then at the data on his screen. Cadet. Lyra Cade, Earth, Sol System, he said slowly, as if testing the words. You are early. Proceed to Orientation Chamber 4. Lyra gave a polite nod. Yes, sir. She walked past, ignoring the murmurs behind her. First Impressions Orientation Chamber 4 was a huge hall with long rows of seats. A massive holographic emblem of the Academy floated in the center, 3 stars surrounded by a spiral. Lyra found a seat near the edge, where she could observe without being in the middle of the crowd. More cadets filled the room, chatting with each other in a mix of languages. Some gave her cautious looks. A tall avian with bright red feathers leaned toward his friend and whispered loudly on purpose. She's the human. They say they fight with their bare hands like beasts. His friend, a gray-skinned reptilian, chuckled. Then she should be good at carrying bags, not leading missions. Lyra didn't respond. She had heard worse. Back on Earth, survival wasn't about words. It was about actions. She simply folded her hands on the desk in front of her and kept her focus. A moment later, a booming voice echoed across the chamber. An instructor walked in, tall and armored in deep black uniform. His voice carried weight. Cadets of the Orion Academy, he said, you have been chosen from thousands. Here you will learn discipline, courage, and unity. Some of you will rise to greatness. Some of you will fail. All of you will be tested. The hologram behind him shifted to show images of past battles, star fleets, and alien landscapes. Lyra felt her stomach tighten. This was real. She was no longer just a girl from Earth. She was a cadet of Orion Academy now. Isolation. The first days passed in a blur of lessons, drills, and exercises. Lyra kept her head down and focused on learning. The classrooms were advanced, filled with holographic displays and simulation pods. She had to work hard to keep up, because the Academy used technology far beyond what humans had at home. But the hardest part wasn't the studies. It was the silence around her. The other cadets formed groups quickly, laughing together, eating, meals in clusters. Lyra often sat alone at the corner of the mess hall. When she walked into a room, conversations dropped for a second, then continued in lowered voices. She wasn't bullied outright, not yet. But she wasn't welcomed either. She was an outsider, marked by the word that followed her everywhere: Deathworlder. One evening after class, Lyra entered the training gym. Rows of equipment lined the room: weights, sparring mats, climbing rigs. A group of cadets paused when she walked in. "She's here," one muttered. "She'll probably break herself trying to keep up," another said. Lyra ignored them and started her workout. She climbed the rigs with speed, balanced on narrow beams, and ran through the obstacle course. Her muscles burned, but she pushed forward, steady and focused. When she finished, sweat dripped down her forehead. She looked around. The group of cadets had fallen silent, watching her with unreadable expressions. Some were surprised, some were frowning. She walked past them without a word. The first spark on the third day, during a strategy class, the instructor asked a question. In a battlefield with limited supplies and 2 enemy forces pressing from both sides, what is your first priority? Cadets raised their hands. One answered, "Reinforce the front line." Another said, "Secure energy resources." The instructor shook his head. "Wrong. Think deeper." Lyra raised her hand. The room fell quiet. "Yes, Cadet Cade." She spoke calmly. "The first priority is survival of the unit. Without survival, no strategy matters. Secure shelter, regroup, then strike when the enemy is unbalanced." The instructor's eyes glinted. "Correct." Whispers filled the room again, but this time they were different. Some cadets looked at her with interest. Others narrowed their eyes, not pleased that the human had given the right answer. Trouble brewing. By the end of the first week, Lyra knew trouble was coming. She could feel it in the stares that lingered too long, in the smirks exchanged when she walked past. The cadets who disliked her weren't just going to keep whispering forever. One group stood out in particular, a cluster of 4 second-year cadets. They were older, taller, and stronger than most first years. They watched Lyra with thin smiles, like predators circling prey. During a break, she overheard them speaking. "She thinks she's special because she's from a death world. Let's see if she can bleed like the rest of us." Lyra's jaw tightened, but she didn't react. On Earth, animals showed their teeth before they struck. These cadets weren't much different. She walked away, her mind calm but sharp. If they wanted to test her, they would. And when they did, she would be ready. End of part 1. Lyra lay in her bunk that night, staring at the ceiling of the dorm. The faint hum of the Academy's systems echoed through the walls. She thought of Earth, the wild forests, the storms, the dangers that had shaped her. Those challenges had taught her one lesson: survive first, then thrive. Here at the Academy, survival meant more than just passing tests. It meant facing those who doubted her, those who might push her beyond the line. Lyra closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "They don't know yet, but they will." And with that, the stage was set. The Deathworlder Cadet had arrived. The days at Orion Academy grew sharper, heavier, and more demanding. Each morning, the alarm blared before sunrise, forcing cadets out of their bunks and onto the training fields. Lyra Cade followed the routine like everyone else, running drills, attending classes and studying late into the night. But no matter how much she tried to blend in, she never escaped the whispers. She's the Deathworlder. Humans are wild animals, not soldiers. Watch her closely. She might snap. Lyra ignored it all. Words were harmless compared to storms on Earth, or the wolves that had chased her through the woods when she was a child. But she knew silence would not last forever. The cadets who resented her presence would eventually act. And they did. The Four Shadows. The group of second-year cadets had been watching her since her arrival. They stood out easily. Rosen, a massive reptilian whose scaled arms looked like iron pipes. Taval, a slim avian with red feathers and sharp talons. Grin, a thick-furred quadruped who could shift between walking on 2 or 4 legs. Mirel, a pale-skinned insectoid with quick reflexes and a sly grin. Together, they were known as the Four Talons, infamous for testing new cadets. They liked to prove their strength by breaking others down, forcing weaker students to quit. Lyra noticed their eyes on her during every class, every drill. When she ran the obstacle course, they watched. When she sparred against practice drones, they whispered to each other. One evening in the mess hall, Rosan made a loud remark as Lyra passed by. "Careful, little human. Don't trip. Gravity here is heavier than on your fragile world." His friends laughed. Lyra placed her tray down at a table and ate in silence, ignoring them. But she felt the tension coil tighter each day, like a bowstring ready to snap. Simulation class. The breaking point came during combat simulation class. The cadets were gathered in a large training dome, its floor covered with soft mats and walls, lined with observation screens. The instructor, Commander Veyran, stood tall at the front. His silver uniform gleamed, and his voice carried authority. "Today," he announced, "you will face close combat drills. This will test your reflexes, teamwork, and survival instincts." Pairs of cadets were called forward to spar. Some matches ended quickly, with one cadet yielding. Others stretched on, with clashing claws, strikes, and dodges. The crowd cheered. Quietly, learning from each fight, Lyra watched carefully, studying movements. She noticed how reptilian cadets relied on brute force, while avians used speed. The insectoids moved with precision, and the quadrupeds used balance and weight. Then her name was called. "Cadet Lyra Cade, step forward." Her stomach tightened, but she moved with steady steps into the center. The crowd grew quiet. Commander Veyran looked down at his list. Opponents will be Rosan, Taval, Grin, and Mirel. A murmur rippled through the cadets, 4 against 1. That was no accident. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had been set up. The 4 cadets stepped into the ring, grinning. "This will be quick," Taval whispered with a chuckle, his feathers ruffling. "Let's see if the Deathworlder can even stand after the first hit." Rosan rumbled, cracking his scaled knuckles. Commander Veyran glanced between them. His expression was unreadable. "Rules are simple. Match ends when one side can no longer continue. Begin." The command rang like a hammer. The 4 moved at once. The warning Lyra did not flinch. She raised her hand calmly. "You don't want to do this?" she said. Her voice was steady, low, and filled with certainty. "You will regret it." The 4 laughed. "Fragile Bones speaks big," Mirel sneered, shifting his insectoid stance. "Let's shut her up," Rosan growled, charging forward. The watching cadets leaned closer, eager to see the human crumble. 12 seconds of fury. Rosan's massive fist came down like a hammer. Lyra moved. She sidestepped with lightning speed, grabbed his arm, and used his own momentum to flip him over her shoulder. The reptilian crashed onto the mat with a thunderous thud. Gasps filled the dome. Before the crowd could react, Taval lunged with his talons outstretched. Lyra ducked low, spinning on her heel. Her foot struck his leg, knocking him off balance. With a swift motion, she drove her shoulder into his chest. The avian stumbled backward, wings flaring wildly before collapsing to the ground. "Two down," Grin roared, charging on all fours. His heavy body thundered across the mat. Lyra leapt aside at the last second, rolled, and kicked sharply into his side. The force sent him tumbling, his momentum carrying him straight into the wall. Morell hissed, darting forward with insect-like speed. His arms lashed out in a flurry of strikes. Lyra blocked with precise movements, her arms snapping like iron rods. Then she caught his wrist, twisted, and swept his legs from beneath him. Morell hit the floor with a grunt. Silence filled the dome. It had taken only 12 seconds. 4 cadets lay groaning on the mat, defeated. Shock. The watching students were frozen, mouths open. She dropped them," one whispered. "In 12 seconds!" another gasped. Commander Veyran's eyes narrowed as he studied Lyra. His expression gave nothing away, but his tone was sharp. "Match over. Infirmary, all of you." The defeated cadets were carried off by assistants, still stunned by their loss. Lyra stood tall in the center, breathing evenly. She had not wanted the fight. She had given them a warning. They had ignored it. Now they knew. Aftermath word of the incident spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. By dinner, every cadet knew the story. The human beat 4 in 12 seconds. Impossible. She's just first year. I saw it with my own eyes. She moved like lightning. Some cadets looked at her with awe. Others glared with hate. A few avoided her entirely, as if she carried a dangerous disease. When Lyra entered the mess hall that evening, the room fell quiet. She walked calmly to her table, sat down, and ate alone. Her hands did not tremble, but inside she felt the weight of every eye on her. She had not wanted attention, but she had it now. Commander's office. That night, Lyra was summoned to Commander Veyran's office. The room was simple: dark walls, a large desk, and a wide screen filled with tactical maps. Veyran stood behind the desk, his hands clasped behind his back. "You handled yourself well," he said at last. Lyra remained silent. "But know this," he continued. "The academy is not a place for brawls. You were provoked, yes, but from now on, every cadet here will see you differently. They will test you again, harder. Do you understand?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, sir." Veyran's eyes studied her, sharp and calculating. "You are a Deathworlder. That means you carry both fear and respect. Use it wisely. Dismissed." Lyra saluted and left. Alone with her thoughts back in her bunk, Lyra lay awake. The hum of the academy's engines filled the silence. She thought of her father's words before she left Earth. Strength is not in breaking others. Strength is in knowing when to stop. She had stopped. She had given them warning. But still, part of her wondered, had she done the right thing? Or had she just painted a target on her back? Her chest rose and fell slowly. She knew one thing for certain. The academy would never see her as just another cadet again. From now on, she was the Deathworlder who ended a fight in 12 seconds. End of part 2. The tension had changed. Lyra was no longer invisible. She was no longer ignored. Now she was feared. But fear, she knew, could be as dangerous as hate. The real test was only beginning. The training domes, classrooms, and mess halls carried a new kind of silence when Lyra walked through them. Cadets stopped talking for just a moment whenever she entered, their eyes following her carefully, as though she were a wild animal that might leap without warning. She did not need to hear their whispers. She could feel them. The Deathworlder, the human, the one who dropped 4 in 12 seconds. The number itself had already become a story. Some cadets said it was exactly 12 seconds, others claimed it was 10, while a few insisted it was 8. No matter the detail, the story spread quickly, each telling making it larger than life. But Lyra herself wanted none of it. She had only defended herself. Yet the academy no longer saw her as just another student. Respect or fear? On the training field, some cadets looked at her with new respect. They nodded quietly as she passed, no longer mocking her size or her human origin. Others, however, kept their distance, their faces tight with suspicion or dislike. One cadet, a slim amphibian named Corin, approached her cautiously during a weapons practice session. "You fight different," he said, his voice low. Lyra glanced at him, adjusting the training staff in her hands. "Different how?" Corin hesitated. "Not like us, not like machines or rehearsed drills. You move like you've done it all before." She gave a small shrug. "Where I come from, fighting isn't something you practice for sport. It's survival." Corin studied her for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. He didn't speak again, but the respect in his eyes was clear. Others, however, whispered louder when they thought she couldn't hear. "She's dangerous. She shouldn't be here. She'll bring trouble." Lyra ignored it outwardly, but she felt the divide growing, the four in the infirmary. Meanwhile, the cadets she had defeated, Roseanne, Taval, Grin, and Mirel, spent 2 days in the infirmary. None of them were badly injured, but their pride was deeply wounded. When they returned, the atmosphere thickened. They walked through the halls with forced confidence, but everyone knew the truth. They had been beaten by a first-year human cadet. Roseanne's glare followed Lyra every time their paths crossed. Taval's feathers ruffled whenever she entered a room. Mirel's mandibles clicked in quiet anger. Grin, the furred quadruped, kept his silence, but his golden eyes burned with frustration. They didn't speak to her directly, not yet, but Lyra could sense the storm building behind their stares. Meeting with the commander one evening, Lyra was called again to Commander Veyron's office. The tall officer stood with his back to her, staring out at the stars through the wide window. "You know what you've done," he said without turning. Lyra kept her posture straight. "I defended myself, sir." "Yes, and in doing so, you've changed everything." He turned now, his sharp eyes locking on hers. "The cadets see you as more than just another student. Some will admire you, others will fear you, and some will hate you. Do you understand what that means?" Lyra nodded. "It means I will need to be careful." Veyron studied her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Exactly. Your strength is real, Cadet Cade. But raw strength is not enough. You must learn restraint, control, and leadership. If you want to stay in this academy, you cannot be a weapon. You must become more." Lyra absorbed his words. He was right. On Earth, survival had meant reacting quickly, fighting without hesitation. But here, survival meant something different. It meant balance. "Understood, sir," she said firmly. Veyron dismissed her with a wave, but his eyes lingered on her as she left. Whispers in the night. That night in the dorm, Lyra lay awake. The room was quiet except for the soft breathing of the other cadets. Her mind replayed the fight again and again, the speed, the movements, the sound of bodies hitting the mat. She remembered the gasps, the silence afterward. She had warned them. She had not gone too far. And yet, she could not shake the feeling that she had stepped across an invisible line. Her father's words returned to her again. Strength is not in breaking others. Strength is in knowing when to stop. She had stopped. But had it been enough? She closed her eyes and let the steady hum of the academy's systems lull her into uneasy sleep. A test of discipline. The following week, training intensified. The cadets were assigned to group exercises designed to test cooperation. Lyra was placed in a squad of 5, including Corin, a sharp-minded insectoid named Zira, and 2 others who kept their distance from her. Their task was to navigate a simulated battlefield a maze of shifting walls and holographic enemies. Points were awarded for teamwork, strategy, and completion time. Lyra kept her voice calm as the simulation began. Stay close. Don't scatter. But one cadet, a proud avian who clearly disliked her, scoffed. We don't need your orders. Human! Within minutes, the squad was in disarray. The avian rushed ahead, triggering traps. Another cadet panicked and broke formation. The simulation ended with their squad surrounded and defeated. Commander Veyron's voice boomed over the intercom. Failure. Squad lacked coordination. Dismissed. The avian turned on Lyra outside the chamber. This is your fault. You think. You're better than us, but you're not. Lyra met his glare calmly. I never said I was better, but if you don't listen, none of us will succeed. Her even tone disarmed him. He muttered something under his breath and stormed off. Corin stepped closer, giving her a quiet nod of support. You were right. They'll see it sooner or later. Lyra hoped he was right. Pressure builds over the next days, the pressure grew. Cadets either wanted to challenge her or avoid her entirely. Instructors watched her with sharp eyes, as if expecting her to lose control again. In the mess hall, she noticed groups forming when she entered, some whispering in respect, others glaring openly. The 4 Talons still hadn't spoken to her, but she could feel their presence like storm clouds on the horizon. They would not forget their humiliation. One evening, as she left the training hall, Mirel stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. His insectoid eyes glimmered. You embarrassed us, he hissed. That won't be forgotten. Lyra stood calmly. You attacked me first. His mandibles clicked. Next time, human, it won't be a class simulation, and you won't walk away so easily. He slipped back into the shadows before she could answer. Lyra let out a slow breath. She had been right. The storm was coming. Small allies. Not everyone hated her. Corin often trained by her side, learning quietly from her movements. Zira, the insectoid cadet from her squad, occasionally asked questions about Earth, curious rather than afraid. What is it like, Zira asked one evening, to live on a death world? Lyra thought for a moment. It's hard. Every day can be a challenge. But it makes you strong. You learn to keep moving no matter what. Zira tilted her head thoughtfully. Maybe that's why you fight the way you do. Lyra gave a faint smile. Maybe. These small connections helped ease the weight of isolation, but she knew they were fragile, easily broken if she made the wrong move. The shadow of revenge. Weeks passed, and tension reached its peak. The 4 Talons had recovered fully, and their pride burned hotter than ever. They no longer mocked her openly, but their silence was worse. It was the silence of planning. Lyra stayed alert, training, harder each day, keeping her instincts sharp. She did not want another fight, but she knew it was coming. One night, as she walked back to the dorms, she caught sight of Rozan watching her from across the courtyard. His eyes glowed under the lights, filled with cold promise. Lyra met his gaze without fear. She would not back down. End of Part 3. The academy had changed for Lyra. She was no longer invisible, no longer underestimated. She was the cadet everyone watched, the one who had shocked the academy in 12 seconds. But respect and fear were dangerous twins. Allies were few, enemies many. And in the shadows, revenge was waiting. Lyra knew the fight was not over. The true challenge was still ahead. Cadet Alara sat alone on the edge of the training field after the sparring match. The crowd had left, but the echoes of whispers still hung in the air. Her victory had been quick, brutal, and efficient. 4 alien cadets in the infirmary, none. Seriously harmed, but all defeated within 12 seconds. She pulled at the sleeve of her uniform, staring at the ground. She had not wanted to fight, yet it always came down to this. Show strength or be treated like prey. Prove herself or be dismissed as fragile. The sky above the academy shimmered with twin moons, silver light spilling over the quiet campus. She should have felt proud. Instead, she felt heavy. Whispers in the dark Alara heard footsteps. She turned. Quickly, instinct ready, but relaxed when she saw it was Joran, the human male cadet who had become her only real friend. He carried a small data slate tucked under his arm and a pack over his shoulder. "You disappeared fast," he said softly, sitting down beside her. "I didn't want to listen," Alara muttered. "To what?" "Them," she said, jerking her chin toward the academy dormitories. "The whispers. They're all the same. Deathworlder monster. Unstable predator, or worse, dangerous tool." Joran gave her a small smile. "They fear what they don't understand." Alara sighed. "They don't need to understand. They just need a story to tell themselves. I gave them one today. 4 bodies down in 12 seconds. That's all they'll ever see." A cadet's burden Joran leaned back, looking at the moons. "Do you know what I saw?" he asked. Alara shook her head. "I saw someone who warned them first. You gave them a chance. You didn't break bones you could have broken. You controlled yourself. That's what I saw." Alara turned her face away. "Control is what they fear the most. They think I could lose. Hit. If I lose it even once, I prove them right." There was a silence. The academy grounds were quiet, broken only by the distant hum of drones patrolling the perimeter. "You carry too much alone," Joran said finally. "But you don't have to." Alara gave him a side glance. "Do you think being near me is safe? You saw what I did today?" He met her gaze without flinching. "I saw a cadet protecting herself. That's all." Summons from the commandant. Before Alara could respond, the academy comm signal buzzed. Both of their wristbands lit up. "Cadet Alara Vera. Report to Commandant Thalos immediately." Her stomach tightened. She knew what this meant. "Guess they want to talk about today," Joran said carefully. Alara nodded. She stood, brushing off her uniform. The weight of unseen eyes followed her as she walked across the grounds, her heart heavy with each step. The command hall was a towering structure of black stone and glass, designed to make cadets feel small before authority. She entered, was scanned by security drones, and ushered into the commandant's office. Commandant Thalos sat behind a desk of polished alloy. His 4 arms rested neatly, and his scaled face showed no expression. "Cadet Vera," he began, his voice cold but calm. "Do you understand why you are here?" "Yes, sir," Alara replied, standing straight. "You put 4 cadets in the infirmary," Thalos continued. 12 seconds. No instructor had time to intervene. Do you think this is acceptable behavior?" Alara held her ground. "They attacked me first, sir. I defended myself. I did not strike after they were down." Thalos studied her carefully. "That is true. Still, your efficiency is alarming." The unseen test. There was a pause before Thalos leaned forward. "You are not like the others here. Your world forged you differently. That makes you both valuable and dangerous. Some will never accept you, others will want to use you." Alara stayed silent, unsure where he was going. Thalos tapped the desk. "There are whispers in the council already. They question whether humans, Deathworlders, belong in this academy. You may be used as the example to remove your kind from training altogether." Alara clenched her fists. "So what am I supposed to do? Hold back until they break me? Pretend to be weak so they can feel safe?" Thalos's scaled lips curled in something like a smile. "That is the question, cadet. What you do next will decide everything. The council will be watching you closely." Training. In shadows, Ilara left the office in silence, her heart burning with frustration. The message was clear. Her every move from now on would be judged, not just for herself, but for all humans in the program. Joren found her outside, waiting. "What did he say?" She told him briefly, leaving out nothing. Joren frowned. "So they'll blame you no matter what you do. If you fight, you're too dangerous. If you don't, they'll say you're unfit." "Exactly," Ilara muttered. Joren crossed his arms. "Then maybe we stop playing their game. If they want to watch, let them watch you win in another way." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "And what way is that?" "Not through fear," Joren said. "Through mastery. Show them you're more than strength. Show them you can outthink, outlast, and outlead." His words lingered. She didn't want to admit it, but he was right. The midnight challenge that night, as Ilara returned to her dorm, a shadow moved in the hallway. "Deathworlder," a voice hissed. 3 cadets stepped out, 2 of them still bruised from the earlier fight, but filled with anger. "You humiliated us," one growled. "I defended myself," Ilara replied calmly. "You think you belong here? You don't. We'll prove it." They lunged. Ilara's instincts surged, ready to end it in seconds. But then she remembered Thalos's warning. The council's eyes were on her. She could not win the same way again. Instead of striking, she moved. Fast but measured. She sidestepped, deflected blows, and let them exhaust themselves. Every strike they threw hit only air or her controlled blocks. She didn't counterattack. She redirected. Within minutes, the 3 cadets were panting, sweat dripping, while she stood calm and unhurt. "Are you finished?" she asked softly. The cadets glared, but none advanced. One muttered under his breath and stormed off. The others followed. For the first time, Ilara had won without breaking anyone. Word spreads. The next day, whispers spread again. But this time, they carried a different tone. She didn't even hit them. She made them look foolish. Maybe she isn't just a brute. Instructors noticed too. A few even gave her nods of respect. Joren grinned when he heard. "See, you can change the story." Ilara wasn't sure yet, but she allowed herself a small smile. The silent watchers, that. Evening she was summoned again, this time not to the commandant, but to a hidden chamber deep in the academy. 2 hooded figures waited there, their features obscured. "You are Cadet Ilara Vera," one said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she answered cautiously. "You have been tested." "You are being watched," the other said. Ilara tensed. "By who?" "By those who see further than the council," the first replied. "Your path is only beginning. Strength is not your burden alone. It is your key. But how you use it will decide far more than this academy." The figures vanished into the shadows, leaving Ilara alone with more questions than answers. A decision. Made that night, lying awake in her bunk, Ilara thought about everything. The fight, the whispers, the commandant's warning, the mysterious figures. She realized something. Being a Deathworlder wasn't just about surviving. It was about choice. She could crush anyone who came at her, yes. But she could also choose restraint, strategy, and leadership. She could define her own story, and if the galaxy was truly watching, then she would give them a reason to see humans not as monsters, but as allies. The training hall was silent. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Lyra stood in the middle, her chest rising and falling slowly, her fists still clenched from the final motion. Around her, broken pieces of the combat drones smoked on the floor. She had passed the impossible test. The instructors had set the machines to full strength to overwhelm any cadet. Yet she was still standing. Not only standing, but calm. Strong. The alien cadets who once laughed at her, who once whispered that Deathworlders are too wild, too dangerous, now looked at her with wide eyes. They had seen skill, discipline, and power. But the story was not finished. The summons after the test, Lyra was called into the council chamber of the Intergalactic Academy, a room filled with towering alien leaders, teachers, and commanders. Lights glowed along the walls, giving the chamber a serious mood. Cadet Lyra of Earth, the head instructor, an old reptilian called Vale, spoke. You were not supposed to survive that trial. The words hung heavy in the air. Many cadets gasped. Lyra straightened her shoulders. With respect, instructor, I was not supposed to fail either. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some aliens nodded in quiet approval. Others narrowed their eyes, suspicious of her confidence. You are a danger to others, one insectoid council member hissed. In the classroom, you injured 4 cadets in seconds. Today, you destroyed our most advanced machines. What if your kind cannot control their power? Lyra didn't flinch. I control it. I do not fight because I want to. I fight because I must. That is the lesson of Earth. Whispers of war. That night, whispers spread across the academy. Rumors of an invasion. The Korgoth, a hostile empire that destroyed colonies, were moving toward the region. The academy was supposed to be a safe place for learning, but soon it might become a battlefield. Lyra walked the quiet halls alone, thinking of the whispers. She remembered her home, the forests and mountains of Earth. She remembered her people, who survived earthquakes, storms, and wars. Humans never had an easy world, but they endured. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Lyra. She turned. It was Kale, the tall avian cadet who once doubted her but now looked at her with respect. The book rumors are true, Kale said. The Korgoth are coming. The council is afraid. Many of us have never faced real war. Lyra studied him. His feathers trembled slightly. Fear. She could see it in his eyes. You have trained for peace, Lyra said quietly. But humans, we train for survival. If war comes, I will not hide. I will fight. And I will stand for all of you, if you let me. Kyle nodded slowly. For the first time, there was no mockery in his gaze, only trust. The first strike. The attack came sooner than expected. The night sky above the academy burned red as enemy ships broke through the defenses. Explosions rocked the ground. Sirens wailed. Cadets ran through the halls, panic spreading. Lyra didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the armory. Her instincts screamed louder than the alarms. This was no test. This was survival. Inside the armory, she grabbed a standard-issue training rifle. Not advanced by human standards, but it would do. Around her, alien cadets fumbled, their claws and tentacles shaking as they tried to hold weapons they rarely used outside simulations. Kale found her again. What do we do? He asked, his voice unsteady. Lyra met his eyes. We fight. Together. The battle for the academy. The enemy stormed the outer gates. Huge warriors in black armor, their weapons glowing with plasma energy. The cadets had only seconds to form a line. Hold steady, Lyra shouted. Her voice carried more power than she expected. The others listened. The first wave hit. Chaos followed. Plasma blasts lit the courtyard. Alien cadets stumbled, some retreating in fear. But Lyra moved like lightning. She weaved between attacks, striking with precision. Her shots dropped enemies one by one. Kyle fought at her side, inspired by her courage. Soon others joined, their fear replaced by determination. But the Korgoth were stronger, larger, and trained for war. The line began to falter. Lyra's heart pounded. She knew this was the moment. If they broke now, the academy would fall, she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. Remember why you are here, not to hide in books, not to fail in fear. You are cadets of the academy. You are the future. Stand and fight. The words struck deep. The cadets roared. They fought harder. Side by side, they pushed back the enemy. The turning point in the middle of the battle, Lyra spotted the enemy commander, a towering brute with a jagged blade glowing red. He was cutting through the defenses, heading straight for the command tower. If he reached it, the academy's defenses would fall completely. Without thinking, Lyra charged. She ducked under his swing, the heat of the blade burning her cheek. She struck his leg with her rifle, then rolled away as he roared in anger. They clashed in a brutal fight, his strength against her speed. Around them, the battle raged, but more and more cadets turned their eyes to Lyra. They saw a human, small compared to the towering enemy, standing unbroken. Finally, with a desperate move, Lyra leaped onto the commander's arm, climbed his shoulder, and struck his helmet with all her strength. Sparks flew. The giant fell. Cheers erupted from the cadets. The enemy line faltered. The Korgath began to retreat. The academy was saved. The aftermath. When the smoke cleared, the survivors gathered in the courtyard. Some were injured, some shaken, but all were alive because they had fought together. The council arrived, their eyes wide as they saw the cadets who had stood their ground. At the center was Lyra, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, her rifle still in hand. Vale, the old reptilian instructor, stepped forward. His deep voice echoed, "You, human. You turned fear into courage. You gave strength to the weak. You have shown us that Earth's spirit is not chaos, but resilience." Lyra lowered her rifle. She didn't smile, but her eyes held steady. Humans are not monsters. We are survivors, and we will stand by our allies if you let us. The council was silent for a long time. Then slowly, they bowed their heads. The legacy of a Deathworlder weeks later, the academy was rebuilt. The story of the battle spread across the galaxy. Other species whispered of the human cadet who stood against an army, who saved her classmates, who showed what it meant to be from a death world. No longer did the cadets avoid her in the hallways. No longer did they whisper insults. Instead, they greeted her with respect, some with gratitude. Kale walked beside her one day, his feathers shining in the sunlight. "You have changed this place forever, Lyra. You showed us that being a Deathworlder is not a curse. It is a gift." Lyra looked up at the stars. She thought of Earth, of the hard soil, the storms, the endless fight for survival. She thought of how every struggle had prepared her for this moment. She was no longer just a cadet. She was a symbol, a reminder that humans, fragile in body but unbreakable in spirit, could stand where others fell. And somewhere deep in her heart, Lyra knew this was only the beginning, because the galaxy was vast and danger would always return. But now, she was ready, and she was not alone.